Well, good morning. Good to have you with us on a busy news day. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. And we're going to get started this morning with President Trump's joint address to Congress. In a sprawling partisan speech, the president touted his newly imposed tariffs, the crackdown on illegal immigration, and cuts to what he called wasteful spending, all while celebrating the end of what he described as woke policies like diversity and inclusion and regulations on fossil fuels.
The night was not without drama. Within the first few minutes of the speech, one Democratic lawmaker, Texas Congressman Al Green, was removed from the chamber for disrupting the proceedings and refusing to sit down. He was yelling that the president had no mandate to cut Medicaid. That did not deter President Trump, who went on to speak for an hour and 40 minutes, the longest joint address to Congress in recent history. He compared himself to George Washington and declared that America's golden age has only just begun. Here are some key moments.
We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started. We won the popular vote by big numbers and won counties.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. The chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session.
And our country will be woke no longer. We suffered the worst inflation in 48 years. As president, I'm fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again. Joe Biden especially let the price of eggs get out of control. To that end, I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it. Reciprocal tariffs kick in, and whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. It's time to end this senseless war. If you want to end wars, you have to talk to both sides. My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future, because the golden age of America has only just begun. It will be like nothing that has ever been seen before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Now, meanwhile, Democrats picked a rising star and relative newcomer to deliver their rebuttal. Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin is a former CIA analyst who served 3 tours in Iraq and won the open Senate seat in this swing state last year. Last night, she introduced herself to the American people and warned those listening to President Trump's address to read the fine print.
President Trump is trying to deliver an unprecedented giveaway to his billionaire friends. He's on the hunt to find trillions of dollars to pass along to the wealthiest in America. And to do that, he's going to make you pay in every part of your life. Americans made it clear that prices are too high and that the government needs to be more responsive to their needs. America wants change, but there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way. And we can make that change without forgetting who we are as a country. Don't for one moment fool yourself that democracy isn't precious and worth saving.
For more, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist. Aaron, good morning. Lots to cover. This was the president's first speech to Congress in his second term. Came 6 weeks into his term. Axios reporting 9,900 words. He covered a lot of ground, though it did take a while to get to really what's voters' top issue right now, and that's the economy. What were some of the biggest headlines?
Yeah, you're right. Almost 2 hours in this speech from President Trump last night. He did touch on a lot of these social and culture war issues. He touched on a few policy issues as well. We didn't really hear any new proposals from President Trump in this speech last night. We heard him talk about the things that he sees as his successes in the last 6 weeks, or the first 6 weeks of this second term. He talked about, he attacked transgender athletes, as we've heard him do before. He blasted DEI programs and said that wokeness is gone as a result of some of the hundreds of executive orders that he's signed in the last several weeks. He did ask Congress for a couple of things. He asked Congress for money, for funding for border security and more deportation. He asked Congress for money for a missile defense shield that he wants to see built during this 4-year term that he has. And on those economic issues, he didn't do a really deep dive on the thing that really was the driver during the course of the campaign, the thing that more people that I talked to when I was out on the campaign trail really cared about, and that was trying to make sure costs were lowered and things became more affordable, that their lives became easier. He talked about wanting to balance the budget and said that he wanted to make sure there were no taxes on tips, on overtime, on Social Security. But that really was about it as it relates to these economic issues outside of the tariffs that we know have now been imposed on Canada, China, and Mexico. The president suggesting that some of these tariffs would lead to more job creation by way of companies coming into the United States and making things here. Of course, Elon Musk was in the chamber. He got a pat on the back from the president for the work that he's been doing with DOGE in terms of the downsizing the federal government, both from a spending budgetary perspective, but also from a workforce perspective, something that we know will continue, Joe and Savannah. And of course, you mentioned Representative Al Green, who stood up during the president's remarks almost at the very beginning in protest, saying that the president did not have a mandate as it relates to Medicare, expressing concern, as some of the signs that Democrats were holding up also expressed about cuts coming for health care for the poorest Americans in this country.
Aaron, let's talk now about the Democrat side of this, the rebuttal. First, what went into their decision in choosing Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin, and then tell us the heart of her message to the American people. We just heard a bit of it.
Yeah, Reagan would be rolling in his grave, she said during some of her remarks, referencing the Oval Office meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine, and of course, Vice President J.D. Vance being mixing it up there as well. But a lot of her speech also focused on her concerns about where America is going under President Trump's leadership. She warned about reckless leadership potentially leading to a recession in this country, and said that his plans don't help the average American, that they help the wealthiest among us. And she said that change is necessary. She agreed that there could be some efficiencies found in the federal government, but she said that chaos was not necessary and was not going to be helpful. You noted that she is a freshman senator, having served in the House of Representatives, but she won in a district of Michigan where Donald Trump also won. And there are some people who see her as a moderate Democrat, one who may be the example for Democrats to follow as elections come down the pike, the midterms obviously coming up in 2 years. And so she was one voice that Democrats wanted to elevate as potentially the next generation of the party.
Aaron, these speeches keep the fact checkers busy. Last night was no different. What did we hear last night that needs to be corrected this morning?
One of the things that stood out to me was the president's remarks about Social Security benefits. He took the time to say that there are millions of people over the age of 100. He suggested that there's even one person on Social Security rolls who may be more than 300 years old. And that was something that caught a lot of people's attention. We've done some reporting on this in the past where there are people over 100, well over 100, who are in the Social Security database. But auditors have said that those people aren't necessarily receiving benefits. It's a flaw in the record keeping, not money that's being doled out to people who don't exist. And then, of course, there were his comments about egg prices, saying that former President Joe Biden was responsible for an increase in prices. There were increases during the Biden administration. This most recent increase that we've seen in egg prices, Joe and Savannah, is really more due to bird flu that has been going through the egg-producing chicken population around this country.
All right, Aaron Gilchrist. Aaron, thank you so much.
Well, relations between the U.S. and Ukraine appear to be improving after President Trump struck a more favorable tone toward President Zelensky during this speech to Congress. Mr. Trump read from a letter sent to him by Zelensky outlining Ukraine's willingness to work with the White House towards peace.
Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you. I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago.
This is a pretty dramatic change from what we witnessed in the Oval Office between these two leaders on Friday, just 5 days ago. That's when Zelensky's visit to the White House was cut short following a contentious meeting that played out in front of cameras. Mr. Trump made the decision to pause military aid to Ukraine in the days after that meeting.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News reporter Matt Bodner. Matt, good morning. So first, let's play a little more of Trump's reading from this letter from Zelensky yesterday.
My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence.
Matt, people may remember this decision from Trump earlier this week to pause military aid to Ukraine. Any idea that maybe that's what spurred this?
Thanks, Savannah. I think that's a reasonable assessment. It's very clear that this put Zelensky, but also Europe, in a very serious, a very difficult position. Let's just take a step back for a moment and kind of consider the current line of contact in the war in Ukraine. It's been relatively stable, more or less, for about a year now, even longer. And the reason I'm pointing that out is Ukraine is fighting a lot of this war with Ukrainian-made weapons at this point in time. There's a lot of drones. Just the nature of the fight has changed so much since earlier in the war when American weapons really did make an existential difference early on. So things have moved a little bit, but American weapons remain absolutely critical. There's obviously a lot of support from Europe as well, but America brings some very high-profile systems into play, things like HIMARS, even just things such as artillery and just ammunition production capacity. America is almost irreplaceable on a lot of these fronts. And I think for Ukraine to have to face the prospect of losing those things, it would really alter the way the fight is going now. It would put the Ukrainian military in a very different position. It would put Ukrainian civilians in a very different position. I want to point out the Patriot air defense missile system, which currently acts as a big shield around major cities like Kyiv right now. These cities are under siege. They're getting hit by Russian drones and missiles every single day. Things you're hearing about that are correct, though they are exaggerated, the scale of devastation. In some places, a lot of places, Kyiv, for example, in Kharkiv, life goes on to a great extent because of something like Patriot. It's really effective at what it does. It catches a lot of the munitions that Russia's currently using to attack civilians in these cities every single day. So the idea of losing supplies like that, I think, really, again, put Zelensky and Europe in a very difficult position. Europe doesn't have the capability to replace something like Patriot. So I think it's a fair assessment that pushed the needle in that direction.
So, Matt, looking forward here, this minerals deal, which was supposed to happen Friday, it didn't. If signed, it would just be the first step toward peace. There's still the very thorny issue of security guarantees. What's next for Ukraine? And is there any indication when this minerals deal could be signed?
So that's the next big question now. Obviously, we've heard from President Trump. It seems like the two sides are getting ready to come back together. For Trump, it's clear that he wants to move forward with this as quickly as possible, the mineral deal and the general peace process as a whole. Zelensky, I think, found himself in a very difficult situation the past few days, wants to get out of this situation as quickly as possible. The Europeans as well. So this could happen really at any moment in the next few days. What we're hearing now is that French President Macron, UK Prime Minister Starmer may actually be traveling sometime in the next week or so, we don't quite know, to Washington with Zelensky to present a united front and get things back on track.
Matt, quickly tell us what's been the reaction in Russia to this.
There's been a lot of reactions. They are generally quite happy with everything that they've seen playing out here. For the past few weeks, there's been a giant argument between the Western allies and Ukraine about how to approach negotiations with Russia. We haven't really heard anything in terms of what Russia is willing to give away. And frankly speaking, looking at their statements, they've rejected most of the proposals that have been publicly aired, things like Western troops from non-American but NATO countries acting as peacekeepers in Ukraine. Russia's denied that. So on the whole, their position is just as intransigent as it was on day one of the war. Savannah?
All right. Matt Bodner, thank you very much.
Let's focus more on the U.S. economy now. Wall Street had a strong reaction to President Trump's tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. On Tuesday, all three major U.S. markets closed lower amid fears the president's tariffs could escalate, becoming a full-blown trade war with America's biggest trading partners.
This morning, though, U.S. stocks are expected to rebound following European markets higher. That's because of comments from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He told Fox Business News yesterday that the U.S. could work out a compromise deal with Canada and Mexico that would scale back those tariffs. Let's listen to what he said.
Both the Mexicans and the Canadians were on the phone with me all day today trying to show that they'll do better. And the president's listening because, you know, he's very, very fair and very reasonable. So I think he's going to work something out with them. It's not going to be a pause, none of that pause stuff. But I think he's going to figure out, you do more and I'll meet you in the middle some way. And we're going to probably be announcing that tomorrow.
NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung joins us now. So we heard it right there from the secretary. We could expect some sort of announcement as early, he said tomorrow, that is now today. So it could be as early as today. And already futures show there's some signs that investors share that optimism, right?
Yeah. I think the challenge with the optimism is that we don't know what that announcement would be. Yeah. I mean, presumably it sounds like there could be some sort of agreement with one or some of the countries that were part of the tariffs that took effect midnight yesterday, which could perhaps lead to the lifting of those tariffs only about 24 hours after they were put in place, or 36 hours after they were put in place. But nonetheless, we have to see exactly what that announcement is. It's just kind of a refresher here. We're talking about the 25% tariffs on our neighbors to the north and south, Mexico and Canada, as well as the additional 10% on China. But when you had the president that was on the world stage just last night touting the benefits of these tariffs, you do imagine that the bar is relatively high for wanting to then lift that. But as we know, the administration has pinned any sort of progress on the fentanyl trafficking into the United States as a sign of progress to then lift the tariffs. Maybe he's seen something from that with regards to Mexico and Canada. Maybe that's what leads to some sort of announcement later on today.
Yeah, this was obviously a piece of what he said last night. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, look, when it comes to the tariffs, he actually acknowledged that this could lead to some price pressures, at least in the interim. Take a listen to what President Trump said with regards to the tariffs yesterday.
Tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They're about protecting the soul of our country. Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that.
Little disturbance. I mean, among the 2 hours of commentary that we heard from the president yesterday, those were the two words that really caught my attention the most, because of the fact that he's really basically telling the American people, look, prices probably will go up. And we've heard this from the likes of Target and Best Buy in commentary yesterday. If companies in the United States have to pay more to bring something into the U.S., guess what? In many cases, they will pass that on to the consumers.
Which begs the question, how soon could consumers see this? You mentioned Target. We actually heard Target talk about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, Target was saying that for groceries, we could see prices increase. And that's because when it comes to Mexico and Canada, we do import a lot of fruits and vegetables, as well as potatoes and grains. These are things that come in, and every time it now crosses that border, as long as these tariffs are in place, that's an extra 25% that a company like an importer will have to pay. They pass it on to a retailer like Target. Target then has to pass that on to the consumer. It might not be 25% to 25%, but there's going to be some bleed through there. So again, how long and prolonged do these tariffs stay in place? Maybe there's some sort of resolution today, as the Commerce Secretary was alluding to. But if not, every day that these tariffs are in effect is an increased likelihood that the American consumer is going to have to pay those costs.
All right, Brian Chung. Brian, thank you so much.
As always. Well, this morning, a powerful storm is making its way across the country, threatening to bring blizzard conditions to the upper Midwest and gusty thunderstorms to much of the East Coast.
The system's already leaving a trail of damage in the south. In eastern Mississippi, the strong winds ripped the roof off of this jail. The inmates were moved to another jail nearby. That same system is responsible for this damage in North Texas, where planes flipped over at an airport near Dallas. And in New Orleans, the Mardi Gras flags snapping in the wind as the storm threatened to cancel yesterday's festivities. Organizers were able to still pull off the parade, though. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch was in New Orleans and shows us what happened.
The potentially dangerous storms are bearing down on tens of millions of Americans.
Possible phone cloud right in front of me.
From the upper Midwest to the deep south.
This is moving fast. If you were under that tornado warning, you need to be in your shelter now.
Everything from blizzard whiteouts to tornadoes are possible.
I mean, it just went right through here.
At least 2 twisters already confirmed in Oklahoma, with dust storms blowing over parts of Texas. Hundreds of thousands of power outages reported. And Dallas-Fort Worth Airport temporarily grounded all flights. Outside Dallas, these small airplanes tossed around. Meanwhile, several homes and buildings were damaged.
I was scared. I mean, I just said the prayer. I just said, God, don't let any of us get killed.
The dangerous storm sweeping across the south on Fat Tuesday, jeopardizing massive Mardi Gras celebrations. New Orleans still held its major parade, but cut the event short. Despite the ominous forecast, tens of thousands still lined the streets.
We're going to always come outside. We're not about to stop. We're not stopping nothing. We're going to still party.
In all, roughly 15 million people are at risk of severe weather. Roughly 16 million people are under winter alerts that include some blizzard warnings. and roughly 17 million people face red flag fire warnings. Meanwhile, little relief as this stretch of severe weather keeps marching across the country.
For more on the severe cross-country storm, let's check in with your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. We've got one more day-ish to deal with this system, but it's still going to be a busy one. We've still got basically all the same impacts that we had yesterday, just in different locations. So let's highlight some of those spots. This morning, it is, of course, active across the southeast. Notice we've got this thunderstorm watch that's going to go for a little while longer. We've got a couple more hours on that. It does extend into northern Florida and up into southern portions of South Carolina. This line of thunderstorms, of course, already prompting some of these thunderstorm warnings and even tornado warnings across the Carolinas. So heads up, that's what we're watching here through the day today. And it will shift a little farther to the east. Notice where that enhanced risk is centered. Norfolk down to Charleston, including Raleigh and Wilmington. And that's through the afternoon hours. All the same impacts as yesterday, or the potential for them, I should say. We've got wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour, and we've got the chance for some of those tornadoes. Again, this goes through this afternoon. The chilly side of this system is also busy. We've got blizzard warnings that are up. Remember, we've got not just impressive snowfall rates happening up to 2 inches per hour, but also some really strong winds across this region. So travel going to be extremely difficult for our friends across the upper Midwest. No surprise, we've got 18 million people under winter alerts this morning. And on top of that, those wind warnings, 114 million people included in those. Strongest wind gusts, 40, 50, 60, even close to 70 miles per hour. You know what that means. Airport likely delays across those major hubs across specifically the Central Plains, but really anywhere out east we could see that, and we'll also see some of those widespread power outages. Now, this is the last gasp, that's kind of a tongue twister, of this winter storm. So we'll see the strong winds and snow for the upper Midwest. We've got the heavy rain, severe risk for parts of the East Coast, stretching down to the southeast, and then still some chilly winds across the Great Lakes tomorrow. But this is kind of where we see things wrapping up. It'll be a little slick and kind of cold across the Northeast, and then we'll see a change. Now, a couple of things. Topsy-turvy. How good is that word, guys? Is it one word or is it 2 words? I don't know. Whatever. Either way, I really like it. And it basically describes our temperatures that we're going to see here over the next couple of days. We've got really warm winds out ahead of that system. So that means across the Northeast, yeah, we might see some rain today, but temperatures in places like New York running above normal. 57 degrees. We've got mid-60s for Washington, D.C., upper 60s for Charleston. Different story behind that system. Chilly temperatures, way colder than yesterday across the parts of the Midwest, guys. So 40s, 30s, 50s, kind of a range for our friends there.
It's like Freaky Friday on the weather map.
Yes, I like it. Another kind of topsy-turvy vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got one to add?
This is my least favorite, though, when it's like warmish and rainy.
Oh, I hate a mist.
Yeah. Ugh,
I hate
so
a mist.
Yeah.
In case you were wondering what my least favorite weather.
A lot of strong motions here. All right. No mists here.
Thanks, Angie.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.